everybody. My name is Pavel. I work as senior engineer at Enonic. And it is my pleasure to share with you what I've been doing for the last, I calculated it once, and I think it was 587 days, something like that. So it took quite some time. So let's dive right into it. What is Next.js? Since this is what we integrated with. And this is a flexible React framework that gives you building blocks to create fast web applications. This is a quote from the Next.js website. Some of you may ask, how is it different from React? And well, it contains React. React is just a library that Next.js builds upon. It adds you infrastructure, optimization, and different tools that you can use along with React. So this is something bigger than React. And which tools are that? This is just to name a few. I didn't want to overwhelm you with all the tools, but as you can see, this is pretty comprehensive set. Enough for building the most demanding applications. If I were to pick a few just to feature, then it probably would be super easy routing, because it's folder based. You just organize your files in a folder structure, and then there you have it. Client and server rendering, this is a common thing these days. It comes from React, but Next.js adds some more very nifty features on top of that, like incremental static regeneration and static pages. But we'll get back to that later. And there is a lot of optimizations right out of the box that you do not need to think about. And you will think, how did you live without them after you use them? And much more. So that looks pretty promising. That is why we chose to integrate it, and also because we saw a lot of interest and potential in Next.js. So we created an opinionated out-of-the-box integration between Enonic and Next.js for building websites. One word I probably need to describe a bit more is opinionated. Why is it opinionated? Because it's not the only way of doing things, but it is one we think suits best for integrating Next.js with Enonic. That is why we went this way. And our requirements, what we had in mind when we started doing that, were pretty simple. And red crosses indicates targets that we did not achieve, and green marks the opposite. So first and foremost, we wanted this seamless editorial experience. So people who are used to working with Next.XP know how easy it is to create a page and do the drag and drop editor to change layouts and drop parts. And this must work exactly the same, to the point that the editor doesn't know if he is dealing with Enonic rendering or external Next.js rendering. And I think it went pretty well. And but you will judge it later. You will see yourself. Next.XP coding is optional, so that means that you will not need to do any XP integration at all, because if you take the standalone Next.js, you will have to do a lot of integration with Enonic XP. That will take you roughly 587 days. So you better not. Next, we wanted to integrate the Enonic GraphQL API in the way that it works naturally, and you don't have to think about, you don't have to read about it. You just write the GraphQL query, alone with your component, and then it will be put where it needs to be by the Next.XP SDK. And finally, we wanted to still give editors control over URLs, because it's what editors currently have with structured content. And it was fairly easy. This line probably took a week out of all of this time because of the Next.js folder routing. It was pretty easy. So you'll probably wonder when to use Next.XP. Yes, it sounds very exciting, but it is not a cure for every disease, and you probably need to consider when you want to use it, and obviously when you want to use Next.js frontend, because it integrates Next.js with Enonic.xp. So this is quite an obvious bullet, and it works out of the box. You don't need to do anything. You just drop it, and well, maybe you just need to configure, and it will just work. When you want a flexible CMS backend with customizable API, which means that CMS like Enonic, for instance, which has it, is integrated with it and works out of the box again. Blazing fast rendering. Here I'm coming back to the thing that I mentioned about static rendering and also the data fetching. We optimized, Next.js has some data fetching optimization, but we took it even more further and added a lot of optimization, resulting in just 2 queries to the GraphQL API. Indifferently of how many queries you can have. And we'll get to that later. You will see that you can have a lot of queries on single page. Component-based page editing. This is a thing that everyone who uses Enonic.xp is used to. And this is a page editor where you just drag and drop components on the page or rearrange them. And that needed to work with Next.js. And that is what took the most of the time, because it was that and the static pages lifecycle. But we'll get back to that. I will focus on those topics specifically because those are the most interesting and difficult. And also the structured, if you want the structured content, obviously you want to use, it's maybe not your only choice, but it's a good one. And because it is present in Enonic.xp. So finally, if you're still with me, if you still want to use Next.xp, then those who doesn't, you can leave. It's probably time to dive a bit deeper into how does it actually work. So here you have your Next.js server and your Enonic server. Both of them can be deployed locally in the container, in the cloud, anywhere. And they communicate with each other. The way we made it is we made an addition to Next.js, which we called Enonic adapter, and it is available on npmjs.org. And we also made a similar part on the Enonic.xp site, which is Next.xp app. And this is an application. This is not a library. You don't need to change your site or do anything. You just install it from Enonic Market. It is available on Enonic Market right now. And then you just add this app to your site. And it is supercharged with Next.js rendering now. As simple as that. So it's 2 applications that you add on each of these servers, which communicate between each other. And with your own code. You have your React components on the Next.js server, and you have Content Studio in Enonic.xp. So looks pretty simple, right? Now let's dive a little bit deeper into those topics that I mentioned. And the first one is static pages, which is one of the reasons we chose Next.js, because it gives you a possibility of creating your pages statically, and then they are served blazing fast. Because they are just pure HTML and JavaScript stored on the server. They just pop in your browser. It is very fast. And this is done during the build time. So when you build your Next.js site, the way we made it, it builds with using static pages. Also, what we have there is, since your site is static, obviously when your editor change something, you want it to be reflected in your static pages. Because usually they don't tend to change at all. They are there for the name. So we added an on-demand revalidation, and I'm using the Next.js terms here. We use that in such a manner that Next.XP SDK listens to the Enonic events, and whenever it considers that this event resulted in a change of because of the change of content, we initiate the revalidation of this static page, so the page reflects the change. But this is not a good way of doing it on every change. Probably when your editor just fiddles with the page, you don't want to do it every time. And I will explain how we went about it on the next slide. And the last thing that takes care of the static pages is the incremental static regeneration. Again, the term from Next.js website. And this time, it's not event-based, but this is schedule-based revalidation. So you can configure. We do not use it. You have the option of using it. We do not just right now because the on-demand revalidation seems to work pretty stable and enough for keeping the pages up to date. But in case you want to just revalidate your site and regenerate the static contents once a day, you're free to do it on top. So this kind of embraces what we used for static pages and how we keep them up to date. That is a pretty difficult task usually if you do it manually, and we saw customers started adopting Next.js with Enonic.XP and they had some troubles with it. So we spent some time to make it right. And now let's return to the case when your editor is just editing your site, some content. He doesn't publish it, he just edits it in the real time, and he wants to see the change in the preview. For those who don't know, Enonic Content Studio has the content wizard where you edit the content and you have the preview right next to it available, so you can see the changes immediately. But with the static pages, this is not possible since they are static. And therefore, we had to use Next.js's preview mode. So the way it works seamlessly for the editor. It doesn't require any additional actions. But the way it works is, for instance, someone changes the content here. Content Studio asks for a preview. And then Next.XP understands that Content Studio asks for a preview, not the static version. It goes to, you will have to do it manually if you don't use Next.XP, by the way. It goes to the Next.js with the preview request, preview mode request. And then Next.js returns a token that will later tell itself that this is a preview mode, serve a preview mode. So Next.XP gets this token and then uses it, and along with the Enonic session, to go to the guillotine and query for the data. So it goes to the Next.js first, and then Next.js with this token. Next.js understands this is a preview. It uses this session to query the data from the Guillotine API. Then it is returned as JSON. Next.js created the HTML, and then Next.XP comes into play again, and it creates relative links and some process into your HTML on top of that. So it works independently of where you access it from. Any questions so far? Yeah, it looks simple to me too. Well, this is a very simplified graph. Well, maybe I should have shown you something, right? Because I just talk about it. Maybe it's a good time to show something, like with static pages. So with Next.js, the way you make the page static is you just define the getStaticProps method, which when found by Next.js will tell it that this page is static, and it will attempt to create a static page. But if there is a token that I talked about just right before, then it will try to recreate the page and show you the live preview. So we use that one to create static pages, and then on top of that we supply the token when we need the real-time preview, and it is returned to you. And the pages are static. I will show you. For instance, this is a static page. Well, maybe I will show you the home page. This is how fast it renders. Because it is static, it just pops in your browser. No time at all, no delay. Just the network delay. That's all it takes. If we return back to the slides, and this sounds pretty complex, and it probably should have been better if I just showed you the live demo, how it works. For instance, the same movie. I'm going into Enonic Content Studio's page editor. You can see the live preview that I told you about. And I just, this page is supposed to be static, right? I just showed you that. Where was it? Here. It's static. Trust me. No time today just yet. I'm saving it. And then page editor will update it, and you can see that it's no time to die just yet. So this is live, but if I will go to the static page, this is not live, because this is a master branch. This is a published content. You don't want it to change just yet, but you want to change it when you publish your new content, right? And I will get back to that after the last slide, or the one before last that I have. And this is about component-based page rendering. This is what you see in the page editor when you just drag and drop components and you see the preview. This is all taken care of by the page editor. And this is a schematic illustration of how it looks like, what it looks like for the page editor. You can have a part, and then you can have a layout which is 2-column layout. You can select which one do you want, and it has 2 parts, and then you have some text on the footer. You can move them around, drag and drop. This is what page editor does. So in order to make it work with Next.js, we had to come with some interesting decisions. For instance, we needed to create some kind of a component registry where you register all of your React components, and then you just say that whenever Content Studio wants this part, for instance, part with a descriptor header, That should be the certain view that you created in your React. So, and Next.XP, when asked to render the page, it will ask component registry if we have a part with a descriptor header. If we do, then it just takes it and renders. It takes its query. We have queries that you can assign. I mean, we have the option to assign query to each part and each component on the page. So you can not only have the GraphQL query for the whole page, but every single component can have its own query, and they are then combined into a single super query and sent to the GraphQL API, and it's done by Next.XP. And this is why we only have just 2 requests to GraphQL API, which saves a lot of time. Imagine you have 17. Imagine you have 17 components on the page that can result in 17th query alone, in addition to some technical queries that we need to make. So that will easily go up to 20 queries. We have just 2, independently of indifferently of how many components do you have. And this is per component queries. This is what extends the Next.js fetching mechanism. We aggregate them into just 2. So let's look how it works in the wild. For instance, I will edit something different because if I edit just the same page, you will become suspicious probably. For instance, I will open just the home page. You can see it's static again. It renders quite fast. And I will then, someone dropped something. For instance, I want to drop a part. This is how you do it with the page editor. I just dropped a part, and I select the descriptor, like child list, for instance. Oops, missing component. But this is not the demo course. This is myself, doing the homework. Because I just, this is how component registry works. I just commented it out, so it doesn't know about this part. It does know about the heading part, about the 2-column layout. You can see, you can edit. Hopefully you can see. I didn't find the shortcut for the font layout. And if I enable it back and save this file, and I reload the page, Next.XP now knows about this part. As you can see, it is rendered. Save the part, save the page, reload the static version. It didn't select anything because I need to mark as ready and publish it. Now did I do any change? Yes, I did. Now you can see the part is added to the static page, and it is static again, so it doesn't change anymore. It was just updated with the changes you just published. And all of this works seamlessly for the web editor. I bet you couldn't have guessed that this page here used Next.js for rendering, because it looks just the same. You can use all of the tools Content Studio gives you for page editor, with page editor. But back to the presentation, this is not enough for us. And we have a roadmap for adding more features to the Next.XP. The first one being multi-language support. Not that you cannot do it right now, but right now, if you want to utilize multiple layers in Enonic for different languages, you will have to have separate Next.js deployment for each of these layers. We want to use the Next.js's locale feature to have just one deployment and make it able to address different content layers in Enonic. Also, we wanted to standardize the client-side data fetching. Those are things like single-page applications and lazy loading. Because, for instance, if you do it right now and you have your Next.js server on one domain and you have your Enonic.XP server on another domain, and you just go straight and just do it as usual, you will most likely bump into the cross-original request exception. So we want to make it nice and smooth for everyone and maybe give some tools for doing that. Also, we want to incorporate the Next.js 13 features, most important of which is the app directory, which gives you layouts, server components, and streaming, which is HTML streaming, when you just stream parts of your page as a web socket, and you just give bits of the page to the page, and it just reflects it without reloading the whole page. Also, we're gonna support even more Enonic.XP events to even make even tighter and more seamless integration with Enonic.XP. And the last one in the list is custom URL patterns to make it look like app-like. Maybe you don't want your URLs to look like your content structure. You want to customize it a bit, and this is what this feature is for. But so this is coming. Stay tuned. Hopefully faster than 587 days, but there's a lot of work ahead. Thank you. Any questions? I bet you have one.
How does the Next.js and Next.XP interact with the ID providers and the session for logged-in users?
Okay, so you are asking about the authorization.
Yes.
Yeah, currently we just use Enonic.XP session for that. But Next.js gives you the middleware. Remember that screen with lots of boxes? There was middleware written on one of them, and with middleware you can plug in authorization into every request to Next.js, and you can connect to any third-party service. So it can be anything, not just ID providers.
Right. So the user will be round-tripped from, in case you use an ID provider, for example, Azure AD, you will first be hitting the Next.js, then the Enonic, then Azure, and then the whole way back to get the session.
I think I can.
Yeah.
So there's two different things. One is what Pavel showed you in Contour Studio.
Mm-hmm.
Then we use the session of the Contour Studio.
Right.
So you're actually rendering with the user you are in Contour Studio.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do this for the public, let's say use Next.js with login on the public side, then the login would happen in Next.js. You would actually have to log in there.
Mm-hmm.
And you would get some tokens in Next.js, and you would have to pass those to XP and set up ID providers that would accept them.
Right. Okay.
So basically you're down to the vhost exposing the GraphQL API, and you would make sure that it is able to understand that token. Yeah. So it's absolutely possible.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. Yes?
If you have a big site with lots and lots of pages, and all those pages have a header, and you do a change to the header, you then need to regenerate all pages for static view.
You guessed it right. Since all of them have header and they are just plain HTML, you need to update them some way. Maybe Next.js guys will come up with something better than that, but I doubt it, because static pages is just an HTML and a JavaScript that comes along with it, and the header is etched into it, right? It's static. If it is changed, you need to regenerate them.
I should probably mention that this is what we're doing. So every time we publish, we keep all cache pages, because it's the cache problem. You have no idea what it's going to affect. Right? It could be that it affects your front page. It's a search changes. So we basically kill everything. Everything has to regenerate. And that's, you can always go in and try to make something more fancy.
And we will.
Yeah, we're working on something, but it's really hard to know what not to kill to get it done.
Yeah, two things to add here. First is the even tighter integration with Enonic.XP. Remember I mentioned that in the roadmap. And as soon as we feel that the integration is tight enough, we can stop killing all the cache, and we perfectly can do it just with a page that is changed, but it can have references or some part might have changed, or some fragment might have changed that is used on this page. So right now the event support is not enough to be sure.
You cannot be sure what the front end
Yeah,
is doing.
yeah.
So
After we know that we listen for everything that can change the event, we can just invalidate single page. And also we are waiting for the Next.js feature, which is cache tags, I believe it's called, where you can assign a tag to every page that is generated statically, for instance, and then you can name it content, or you can name it whatever you like, and then you just say, Next.js, could you please invalidate all the pages with this tag? And then, for instance, if the page has, if the part is referenced on certain pages, you can assign a tag, and then you can ask Next.js to invalidate only those pages. But we are waiting for that, and it is not there.
we should probably also mention an important thing, because like conceptually Next.js is going to, like, if you say, oh, kill the cache on this page, right? Revalidate it. It's supposed to keep serving the old page until it is regenerated. However, because of lacking support and features in Next.js version stuff, we actually have to delete the cached files now, but they have this on their roadmap. So it means that, yeah, there is kind of this issue right now, but it's not on our side actually, it's on the Next.js. I could also mention that we're looking into building what we call like a booster app in XP, which is going to do more or less the same. So if you activate the booster app, it's going to cache a static version of the pages and keep serving them until a new page has been generated. But this is not I don't have a deadline for it. But so you might also get a similar function in XP Diffusion. But yeah,